I'm Reshad Hudson. On this week's Capitol Conversations, we take you behind the scenes of the dramatic effort to get Todd Blanche confirmed. It was supposed to be one of the easiest confirmations of the year. President Trump nominated his former personal attorney, now acting Attorney General, to be the next Attorney General, but the votes appeared to not be there, even with the president's party controlling the Senate. When President Trump selected Todd Blanche to be Attorney General, many Republicans expected a smooth confirmation. Blanche had spent years as one of the president's personal attorneys, representing him through multiple criminal cases before returning to public life. But inside the Senate Judiciary Committee, something unexpected happened. The confirmation vote was postponed, and suddenly the administration no longer had the votes. The problem wasn't Democrats, it was Republicans. Texas Senator John Cornyn and North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, both members of the Judiciary Committee, and both say they needed more answers before supporting the nominee.
We just want to end the fun. And this is not about Blanche. Blanche is negotiating in good faith.
The concerns weren't about Todd Blanche's qualifications. Instead, they centered on negotiations involving the Justice Department itself. Specifically, two controversial proposals. One, an anti-weaponization fund designed to compensate people the administration believed had been unfairly targeted by previous federal investigations. The other, legal protections involving tax enforcement affecting President Trump and members of his family. Cornyn and Tillis wanted those ideas scrapped, not verbally, in writing.
Every time I think we're getting close to a resolution, somebody throws a wrench into the work. So we, this morning, it looks like we're no closer than we were before.
What's the wrench this time?
Well, as I've said all along, what we're trying to do is get Mr. Blanche to conform the settlement documents in the tax lawsuit to where the sworn testimony was in the hearing. And I'd be satisfied with that. But I don't know, somebody somewhere, I don't know whether it's the White House or somebody works there or somebody works for the president, is basically telling him don't agree to those terms. And so we're kind of back to square one.
And we're live right now on MS Now. I think as you think through what you need from DOJ on this, if they're not able to give you the narrower look at that IRS immunity deal, does that mean you're willing to vote no?
I think I am prepared to vote no, but I do think I owe it to my constituents and to Mr. Blanche to try to negotiate in good faith, and that's what we've been doing. And so we'll see where things are this morning and see where we go from here.
Have you talked to the president?
No. No.
Would a call from him help?
Yeah, he could fix this in a minute, but I don't know who he's listening to or whether he's motivated to do that. So we'll see what happens.
He was saying he thinks that this might be because you don't like him.
You know, I voted with him 99.3% of the time. That has nothing to do with it. This is about making sure that even if you're the President of the United States, you don't get favorable terms from the government in a settlement of a lawsuit that ordinary citizens would not get, like protection from audits by the IRS into the foreseeable future. So I think this is about making sure that we maintain the integrity of our justice system and fairness for everybody involved.
Most confirmation fights focus on a nominee's temperament or experience. This one turned out to be something entirely different. For several days, Capitol Hill became the center of intense negotiations. Every hallway conversation mattered. Every closed-door meeting sparked new speculation. Reporters waited outside of elevators, committee rooms, senators' offices, trying to answer one question: what would it take to earn 2 Republican votes?
Todd Blanche is negotiating in good faith, but it's clear that the approval to get this done is above his pay grade, and we just need to get to that pay grade. I don't believe it's the president.
Tillis wouldn't reveal every detail, neither would Cornyn. Both made clear they were still negotiating.
I'm happy to meet with them as soon as they produce the documentation we requested. And when they tried to have meetings without doing that, I said, we're not having a meeting until you produce a document that we can talk about. Otherwise, it's just it's unproductive.
Behind the scenes, Justice Department officials worked to address their concerns. At the same time, President Trump continued publicly backing his nominee.
Todd Blanche is a very, very good man, and he shouldn't be in the middle of this. He should get approved, because you will never get anybody like him. You're never going to get anybody. And to make him a pawn in this whole thing, this is being done by a senator, and I don't really blame him, to be honest with you. I endorsed his opponent, and as soon as I endorsed his opponent went through the roof, and he won the primary election in Texas for Senate. And the man that lost, the man that I didn't endorse, has become very angry, and that's okay. I mean, I understand that. I probably would do the same thing.
Yet the president made clear there was one concession he wasn't happy about: the proposed anti-weaponization fund. He wanted it to survive.
Large numbers of people, their lives have been ruined. They've been destroyed. Families have been, decimated. There's never been a group of people, most likely, I mean, I can think of a couple that were treated pretty badly, groups, but there's essentially never been a group of people treated so badly as these people. And this fund was not for me. This fund was for those people that have been weaponized, that have been abused. Now, I was abused. They attacked my house, Mar-a-Lago, where I live, and I was, big damages should have been given to me. I don't want anything. I'm not talking about myself. I think that there's a group of people in this country, history will show, that were treated like nobody else has ever been treated. So badly, so horribly. Their families have been ruined. Many, many suicides. They've committed suicide. People that were very successful, that wanted to go to a rally or an event and ended up spending the rest of their lives in horror. No, so I mean, you can say what you want about the fund, and they've agreed to not have a fund, but there are a lot of people that are very upset about it. A lot of Republican people, a lot of Democrat people are very upset about it. A lot of people were covered. I wasn't covered by that fund. I don't want to be covered by the fund. I probably was abused more than anybody in the history of our country.
The Justice Department had to find a compromise both sides could live with. While negotiations continued behind closed doors, Todd Blanche still had to convince senators he was ready to lead the Justice Department. During his confirmation hearing, he faced hours of questioning about independence, politics, and how he would oversee federal law enforcement.
17 months ago, I sat at this table as the nominee to be the Deputy Attorney General, and I told you that serving in the Department of Justice was my American dream. Since then, I have helped lead it, first as deputy and now as acting attorney general, and I'm here today to earn your trust once more. I've lived the American dream. I waited tables to get through college, moved to New York with my wife and 2 young kids, went to law school at night, read textbooks on the late train home while I worked days as a paralegal at the U.S. Attorney's Office. From that start, I became a prosecutor and spent 9 years prosecuting violent gangs and drug dealers. I rose through the ranks of the Department of Justice as a line prosecutor, then a division chief, then as of last year, Deputy Attorney General, and now Acting Attorney General. But I did not take that path for a title. I took it to make a difference for American families and the towns they call home. I am exceedingly grateful to President Trump for his trust, and to my family who have carried me through every long day and late night. My wife, Christine, our wonderful children, Sydney and Justin, my granddaughter, Blaine, who's here today. All of them are here today. My wonderful friends, many of whom are here today.
On Monday, they finally received written assurances they had been demanding. The anti-weaponization fund would not move forward, the tax immunity proposal would not continue, and that was enough to satisfy the 2 Republican holdouts.
The Office of Attorney General is one of the most challenging jobs in the cabinet. You are at the same time the people's lawyer, as Senator Durbin has said, while you are a member of the president's cabinet, subject to being dismissed at the pleasure of the president. It is a very challenging balance to strike, to be sure. The tax lawsuit that was filed by President Trump and his son and the Trump Organization in January of 2026 was what prosecutors called unparalleled in the IRS's history. A contractor with Bose Hamilton got the job at the IRS for the express purpose of leaking tax returns, private tax returns that of people he thought the public needed to know about. That is a violation of the criminal law, and the contractor is currently serving a 5-year term in the federal penitentiary for that. Initially, when the president filed suit, he sought $10 billion in damages. That is nowhere to be found in the final settlement. The settlement documents also created a roughly $1.8 billion weaponization fund. That is no longer part of the settlement. I've been very clear, as others have, that in order to support Mr. Blanche's nomination, I needed specific assurances in writing about a release signed by the acting Attorney General last May. I asked for written assurances that clarifies the scope of the parties to the IRS audit agreement and that permanently ends the weaponization fund. While this may sound like nitpicking to some, it's critically important not only to me but to other members of the Senate. What Mr. Blanche said under oath in his nomination hearing on these topics was important. He said under oath, subject to the penalties of perjury, that he signed the release he signed only applies to the IRS and the Treasury and only the parties who were defendants and the plaintiffs. And he also said once more that the weaponization fund was dead. This past Sunday, Senator Tillis and I came to an agreement after numerous meetings with the Department of Justice and Mr. Blanche on an agency interpretative guidance document that reaffirms what Mr. Blanche said in his sworn testimony in front of the committee. This document will help limit the substance and scope of the audit protection to the defendants in the lawsuit, the IRS and the Treasury, and it limits it to the parties to the audit settlement. It limits the parties to the audit settlement to the plaintiffs, the people who brought the lawsuit, and no one else. And importantly, it was retroactive, stated to be retroactive, not prospective, doesn't apply to future audits, but does settle all claims that were subject to the lawsuit and those that could have been brought in that lawsuit. And again, importantly, it ends the weaponization fund. The DOJ has repeatedly said that this is their legal position and interpretation, including filings in the Floyd versus Department of Justice in the Eastern District of Virginia, and Dunn versus Trump and Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington versus Trump in the District of Columbia. They've been consistent about their assertion on behalf of the United States of America that the weaponization fund is dead. And of course, I expect them to live up to that in any future litigation. Given this agreement with Mr. Blanche, I expect the department to live up to this in future litigation, and I will vote to advance him out of the committee today. But my vote to advance Mr. Blanche's nomination goes beyond this document. We need a stabilizing force at the Department of Justice, and Mr. Blanche deserves the opportunity to provide that as opposed to continuing to serve in an acting capacity and as the Deputy Attorney General. The Department of Justice does not need a temporary, unconfirmed nominee as our nation's top law enforcement officer. President Trump needs someone in this role as well with a strong legal mind, but who also is close enough to him to give him confidential legal advice to tell him hard truths. I thought what Mr. Blanche said during his hearing was very important. He said, I can give the president confidential legal advice, but of course, he doesn't have to follow it. He was elected president of the United States and not me. That's the fact. I would advise Mr. Blanche not to be afraid to capitalize on that earned trust when necessary for the good of the country. I want to thank him for being willing to work with us, Senator Tillis and me, and I want to commend my staff, led by Francie Rooney and others, for their hard work on these negotiations. I'm glad we could address these issues here in committee so that this nomination can move forward, and I'm grateful to the chairman for giving me and Senator Tillis the latitude to do so.
I believe that we have addressed the concerns that I have. The first one I called the payout pot for punks. I've never liked this 1776 fund. It made no sense to me, and I thought it was an insult to the police officers and the people that defended us on January the 6th. It's done. It's been rescinded, and I am satisfied. I also feel like Senator Cornyn addressed the other piece of it that has to do with the audit to my satisfaction. You know, the thing that interests me, and I'm kind of curious about the speeches that come after here, is how everybody has this view of they are as pure as the driven snow, and it's the other side that has a problem. I think we both have a problem, folks. If you want to talk about weaponization, take a look at the Biden administration. Take a look at the Obama administration. Take a look at Crossfire Hurricane. Take a look at the codes that Lois Lerner used in the IRS to target businesses to try and unbank them. Take a look at the prospective pardons on the way out the door that President Biden did for family members, for staff members in Congress. The bottom line is nobody is clean here. And until we start recognizing this behavior as bad, we're just going to one-up it. Maybe it's a little bit more intense in this administration than the last one, and that a little bit more intense than the prior administration, and so on and so forth. But folks, we've got to end this stuff. We do. I'm going to support Mr. Blanche's nomination, but what I hope I see out of him is a bending of the curve of this absurdity. The 86-47, some bonehead in North Carolina thinks that that's a crime. Well, they better damn sure have information to back it up, because if all it is a picture, that person should lose his job, his or her job. Similarly, the people who went after Republicans in the Biden administration should probably be disbarred or disciplined. So at the end of the day, don't act like you're standing on some sort of moral high ground if you start attacking this administration, because I can match you almost deed for deed. What I would like to see here is maybe people saying, look at it, instead of criticizing people on the other side of the aisle, why don't you go back and hold your own caucus and your conference to a higher standard? That's what I'm doing. That's what Senator Cornyn's doing, and that's what I think the American people want more of. And Mr. Chair, thank you for your patience. I know from time to time I don't like delaying markups, but I thought that this was a very important one because we got to a good outcome. And I appreciate Mr. Blanche working in good faith, and I am prepared to vote yes today in his confirmation, or in moving his confirmation or nomination forward.
The committee vote wasn't the finish line, only the next step. Todd Blanche now faces the entire Senate. Most Republicans are expected to support him, but not all. Maine Senator Susan Collins has already announced she'll oppose the nomination, even after the committee breakthrough. Democrats say Blanche played a large role in the administration not releasing what they call adequate information regarding the Epstein case.
Todd Blanche represents only one client, an awful client, Donald Trump. Even if his title is Attorney General, Blanche will still be Trump's lawyer. Hello.
Sorry, hi. Sorry.
See, I say her name and she's so good. Here she is. Anyone who can represent a known pathological liar like Donald Trump can have no integrity. You can't have integrity if you represent Donald Trump because he is such an inveterate liar. And that person, of course, should never, never, never be Attorney General. The central question of today's hearing was not what Trump wants, but what Republicans do. Senate Republicans let Blanche off the hook. That is disgraceful. Todd Blanche spent his confirmation hearing doing what he always does, defending the indefensible. He really tried to claim that this administration has been transparent about the Epstein investigation. Transparent? Blanche doesn't get to talk about transparency when he's still withholding 3 million pages of the Epstein files. Stop that transparency talk. Todd Blanche, where are the files? We are all waiting. All of America is waiting. All of America is waiting. Blanche isn't releasing the files because he knows his boss's name is written all over them. These survivors have already been through hell, and Blanche put them through it again with his mishandling of this investigation. How can we trust a word that comes out of Blanche's mouth when he's already lied to Congress under oath about the Epstein survivors? The only true thing Blanche said today was when he stated, "I'm his lawyer," referring to Donald Trump. That was about it. Blanche tried to correct himself, but that was an all-time Freudian slip. That's who he was. That's who he is. That's who he'll always be. Not an attorney general for the people of the United States. Not for equal justice for all. And where were the Republican senators today? They did not speak up. Why didn't they speak up? We should be doing everything in our power to support Epstein's victims and prevent the abuse they experienced from this happening to anyone else. These survivors deserve their day in court, which is why I introduced Virginia's law to eliminate the statute of limitations that protects abusers like Epstein. Every single Republican ought to support Virginia's law. Instead, Senate Republicans are bending over backwards to hand DOJ over to Trump's personal lawyer, who masterminded Trump's corrupt MAGA slush fund, arranged Trump's sweetheart deal with the IRS, and undermined the investigation of Epstein. The American people don't trust Todd Blanche, and neither should Senate Republicans. These survivors know better than anyone else. Anyone else. How dangerous it is to let someone like Blanche become Attorney General. I thank them for sharing their stories and, as I said, for their courage. And I thank Senator Durbin and everybody else for indulging me.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank Senator Schumer for joining us, and especially thank the people who really make the difference. Their arrival and participation in today's committee hearing was the first issue that I raised with Todd Blanche. What I was looking for was the word yes. I asked him over and over, will you meet with them in 30 days? Will you get this done finally? Baloney is all I got back from him. Oh, they may have a lawyer. If they have a lawyer, that's a problem. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. For those of us who practice law, it's not unusual at all for a client to have a lawyer by their side and the Department of Justice to have their own attorneys in a room. What is the big deal? What was going on there? If you took a listen to what Blanche had to say, he at one point said, well, the president signed this bill as if he wanted to. The reason this bill was introduced, forced through the House, remember, it took a special election to pass it in the House and then to pass in the Senate because no one wanted to be on the record at that point. Took all that effort because the administration and the president and Blanche were resisting us every step of the way. And they were resisting us because there's something in those files they don't want America to see. That's what it boils down to. And we know what it is. It involves some people that will be embarrassment to them. Well, we pushed it today, and I think very publicly, and I hope it is reported. I thank those survivors who were here and sitting in the audience who witnessed this display by Todd Blanche.
And soon the full Senate will take a vote on Blanche's nomination. For more news like this, be sure to check out the other videos on our app. From Capitol Hill, I'm Reshad Hudson.